You didn't just click play, you stepped into the dark corridor. Now there's no turning back. A relative of my mother used to visit us from time to time, spending long days at our house. She always brought evening stories, tales that kept us on edge, some so terrifying that they were not suitable for me or my siblings at that age. But there was one story that haunted me so much it made sleep impossible on a rainy night. I'll tell it in first person, so you feel it the way I did. I used to sit on our balcony, reviewing my studies, when I noticed a woman sitting in the balcony of the building across from us. She would sit there for hours, completely still. At first I thought it was normal. People often sit quietly in their balconies, but something about her struck me as deeply unnatural. Day after day, she stayed in exactly the same posture. One day, I spent 5 hours straight studying while she remained motionless the entire time. It was unnerving. Not just once, not twice. Every day I focused on her, watching carefully. The building across from ours housed a classmate from my college. One day, I decided I would go up and greet him under the pretense of needing some notes. And while I was there, I would ask him about the woman in the balcony, the one who never moved. On the day I prepared my books and my study materials, I glanced at her as usual. She was sitting there, exactly as always. I paused, resting my hand on the balcony railing, staring more closely than ever. And that's when it happened for the first time. She turned her face toward me. Her gaze was terrifying, almost threatening. Her long hair whipped around in the wind, her eyes unnaturally pale. My heart almost dropped when she smiled. A smile that was horrifying, but fixed on me with that same eerie intensity. I stumbled back from the railing, paralyzed, unable to believe what I had just seen. At that exact moment, my mother entered the room. "Are you okay, son?" she asked. I barely answered. I looked back at the balcony, and she was sitting there, motionless, as always. Perhaps I had imagined it all. "I'm fine, Mom. Just a bit stressed from studying," I lied. She patted my shoulder and said, "Relax for a bit, I'll make you some tea to calm your nerves." "No, it's fine," I said, leaving her behind. "I'm just going to get some notes from my classmate in the building across from us." As I descended the stairs, I kept replaying what I had seen. Was it stress or imagination? I reached the ground floor when suddenly, a hand rested on my shoulder. I jumped in terror and nearly fell. "Calm down, sir," said the building's doorman, slapping his hands together in surprise. I tried to explain it away, muttering that I was lost in thought, but my mind was still reeling. The doorman handed me a folded note someone had given him before I left, and said, "This is for you." I opened it and saw a single sentence, spaced unnaturally. "Don't go up." Confused, I asked the doorman about it. He explained that the man who had handed it to him was covered in a black scarf, his face unrecognizable, and vanished before he could see me. I reached the building in the 3rd floor, the apartment where the strange woman's balcony was. I paused for a few seconds, and then the door quietly opened. A woman appeared, matching the terrifying features I had seen in her previous horrifying glimpse. But now she looked normal, her eyes natural, though her hair and features were the same. I was stunned. This was the same face, but now calm. She looked at me and smiled. A beautiful smile, yet with a hint of cunning. We exchanged a brief smile, and I continued to the 5th floor to see my friend. I glanced back several times, noticing her eyes still fixed on me, refusing to look away. Her behavior and gaze were unnerving. Something about her was unnatural. At the 5th floor, I knocked on my friend's door. We exchanged greetings. I told him I was there to get notes, and he offered them to me. I hurried, and before leaving, I asked, "By the way, what's the story with the woman on the 3rd floor balcony? I always see her sitting there for hours, completely still." He looked at me in shock. Third floor? What do you mean? There's no one living there. I said, "Hey, I'm serious. The third floor. She's there every day, sitting for hours. I'm telling you, no one lives there. The previous tenant's husband threw his wife off the balcony and went to prison before we were even born," he said. The words hit me like a lightning bolt. My mind reeled. Who had I been seeing every day? Who had opened the door when I passed by, smiling at me? Man, snap out of it. Are you okay? I'm fine, I muttered, leaving and feeling as if I were dreaming. I didn't understand anything. Back on the third floor, she was still standing, waiting, smiling the same smile. I heard a voice from inside the apartment, a woman pleading for mercy, as if she were being tortured. Without thinking, I rushed inside. I saw a man attacking a woman brutally. Her face was covered in blood. He was dragging her across the floor, hitting her everywhere. "Stop! You'll kill her!" I shouted as I ran toward them, but I kept colliding with an invisible barrier. The strange thing was, they couldn't see me. Every time I tried to reach them, the barrier stopped me. I focused on the woman's features. Impossible. It was the same woman who had stood at the balcony earlier. I looked back, and the apartment door had closed. No one was there. I watched in disbelief as the man grabbed the woman by her hair, dragging her toward the balcony, trying to throw her off. I gasped, my eyes wide, still blocked by the invisible barrier. Finally, he threw her, and she vanished. I ran to the street as fast as I could, but the woman who had been thrown was gone. People moved about normally, as if nothing had happened. I looked around in panic, unable to understand. I rushed back to our building, slipping and stumbling on the stairs. I entered our apartment and ran to the balcony. She was still there, in the exact same position. I couldn't understand it. Suddenly, someone appeared on the balcony. A man standing in front of her. Impossible. It was me. Or my double. He climbed the railing, as if about to jump. She stood behind him, looking at me with that same uncanny smile. The figure seemed hypnotized. People began gathering below the building. Screams echoed from every direction. My mother ran onto the balcony screaming, "My son! My son!" She hid her face in terror. "Mom, I'm here! What's happening? Mom, I'm right here!" I shouted. It was impossible. She couldn't hear me. It was as if I didn't exist. Suddenly, the woman pushed the figure, which was me, down. He hit the ground, dead, blood pooling around him in a large, terrifying stain. I ran to understand what had happened. I knocked and called out to people who were crying, "God help her," but no one responded. I was like a ghost among them. I heard the doorman say, "What was he doing in that cursed apartment? Everyone says it's haunted ever since the man threw his wife off the balcony." I couldn't believe what I heard. I cried, shouting, but no one could see or hear me, dead or alive. It didn't matter. Then, she appeared before me. She emerged from nothing, in her terrifying form, and said, "Didn't I tell you not to go up?" That was just a warm-up. The next story is colder, darker, and much harder to forget. If you own a shop, or work in any place where people come and go, you should know something. Not all your customers are human. I know how that sounds. But after what happened in this story, you'll think twice about locking your doors at night. This one, it happened in Morocco, and it's still passed around today, whispered from generation to generation like a warning. Let me take you back, about 50 years ago, to a strange little place in Casablanca, exactly in Darb Sultan, a market town famous for one thing: black magic. I mean really famous. Animal skulls hanging from doorways, spell books, jars of bones, everything. It was the kind of place that made your skin crawl. In the middle of all this, there was a tailor named Saeed, the best in the region. Known for his skill, trusted by everyone. Women from all over came to him for custom-made dresses. But one night, Saeed's story changed forever. It was past midnight. He was closing up his shop, tired, ready to go home, when she walked in. A girl, in a long black cloak that covered her completely, skin white as death, face like a porcelain mask, and a voice that wasn't hers. Deep, raspy, like a grown man's. She said, "I came from far away, and I won't leave without that dress. You're the best tailor here. I won't go to anyone else." Saeed didn't want to do it. Something about her felt wrong, but he gave in. Maybe out of politeness, maybe fear. As he reached out to take her measurements, he felt it. A wave of heat pouring off her body, and a smell, like burning sulfur. When he measured her shoulders and turned to write it down, he forgot the number. So he measured again. The new number was different. He tried one more time. Different again. That's when he knew. This wasn't just a strange customer. Something wasn't right. But he kept going. Pretended everything was fine. Then she pulled out the fabric. Saeed had seen every kind of cloth in his 30 years. But this one? Black as a void. Rough to the touch. And it smelled not like perfume, but like something ancient. She left the place. Told him she'd be back in 2 days. Didn't say goodbye. Just vanished. That night, Saeed couldn't sleep. And the next day, when he tried to sew, his machine stopped working. No reason. Nothing broken. Everything looked fine. But the second he tried to stitch that fabric, it died again. And right when night fell, she came back. Same cloak, same voice. "Is my dress ready?" He told her no. The machine was broken. She didn't blink, just said, "You promised me. If it's not done in 2 days, you will pay." Then she turned and disappeared. Again. That night, something strange happened. He finally fell asleep. Deep, heavy sleep, like he was drugged. The next morning, the machine worked perfectly. No problems. He started sewing, but forgot to turn on the radio. He always played Quran while he worked. And as soon as the sewing started, the machine stopped again. He turned on the Quran. Nothing. But when he turned it off, the machine worked like magic. That's when Saeed knew. This fabric, this woman, wasn't from this world. But he was too deep in. He finished the dress, and the moment he sewed the last stitch, she appeared, as if she knew. She grabbed the dress, left him a pile of cash, more than he made in 2 months, and then she was gone. He ran home, excited, showing his wife the money, but when he opened his pocket, only blank paper. Saeed collapsed, told his wife everything. She called her father, a man who understood these things. He asked Saeed to bring the leftover fabric, but it was gone, vanished. That night, Saeed had a dream. He was in the desert, surrounded by shadows. In front of him, a wedding, and the bride, that same girl, wearing the dress he made, smiling. When he woke up, he knew. It wasn't just a dream, and word spread fast. People stopped coming to his shop. Whispers followed him everywhere. Saeed, the tailor who made a dress for a Jinn bride. And to this day, in Casablanca, they still say her wedding wasn't for love. It was a binding, and Saeed was part of the ritual. Quick question before we dive into the next nightmare. Where are you watching from tonight? Tell me your city or your country in the comments, and let me know if you're listening in the dark. If you've got dolls in your house, you might want to take a second look at them tonight, because what I'm about to tell you, it started like an innocent hobby and ended in a nightmare that followed a couple to the edge of their sanity. Somewhere in Russia, a husband and wife had been married for over 30 years. They'd never had children, not for lack of trying. The wife, quietly heartbroken, found comfort in collecting dolls. Not the cutesy kind you see in stores today. These were old-fashioned porcelain dolls, some with cracked faces, glass eyes, stiff joints. Her husband didn't mind. He knew why she kept them. In some strange, sad way, they filled the gap that had never been filled. She'd line them up neatly on a wooden shelf in their hallway, all in a single row, like tiny frozen children watching you pass. Then, one day, a new doll came home. That's when the house started to change. It was 2:30 in the morning when the husband woke up to use the bathroom. To get there, he had to pass the doll shelf. Half asleep, rubbing his eyes, he glanced at the new doll and stopped. Its eyes, normally dull glass, were glowing a deep, unnatural red. Thin, vein-like lines spread from them like tiny cracks in porcelain. He froze, blinked, rubbed his face, looked again. The glow was gone. The doll was back to normal. He told himself it was just his sleepy brain playing tricks. But when he opened the bathroom door, he nearly collapsed. The same doll was lying in the middle of the floor, its head cleanly severed from its body, a thick, dark pool of blood spreading across the tiles. Not paint, not dye. Blood. He screamed so loud it jolted his wife awake. When she ran in with him to see, the bathroom was spotless. No doll, no blood, nothing. She accused him of imagining things, of getting old and confusing reality with dreams. But he swore he'd seen it, and over the next few weeks, he would be proved right. One night after dinner, the wife came into the bedroom to find their blanket folded neatly over the bed. But when she lifted it, her breath caught. The bedsheet underneath was soaked in a thick, dark, almost oily blood. It dripped slowly onto the floor in heavy drops, like something alive. She screamed and screamed until her husband came running. But the moment he entered the room, the bed was perfectly clean. It was happening to both of them now, just never at the same time. Then came the dreams. The husband and wife began having the exact same nightmare. They'd see the new doll leading all the others from the shelf, marching into their bedroom with tiny knives in their porcelain hands. The dolls would climb onto the bed and start cutting, slicing, tearing at their flesh. They woke up gasping, sweating, shaking, and the dream kept coming back, night after night. The husband began hearing children crying in the house when he was alone. When he'd follow the sound, it would lead him to the new doll, its porcelain cheeks wet with tears. The wife swore she'd seen the doll moving, standing in different corners of the house, its eyes shifting, following her. And sometimes, blood would spill from it, pooling around her feet, even when they were meters apart. The husband begged her to throw it away, but she refused, until the day she finally broke. They got rid of every doll, all of them. For 4 weeks, the house was peaceful. No strange sounds, no dreams, no blood. But in the 5th week, she woke at 3 a.m. and nearly stopped breathing. There, in the corner of the room, was the last doll, sitting on a wooden chair, just staring at her. That night, she collapsed into a full nervous breakdown and was hospitalized. The couple moved far away, leaving the house for sale. Neighbors said they never saw them again. And to this day, no one knows who owns that house now. This is one of the scariest stories you'll ever hear, because its details go beyond imagination. Just picture this: being invited to a party, where everyone attending is a Jinn. That's exactly what Zach Bagans claimed. Yes, the same Zach who hosted a hugely popular paranormal show on American television back in 2008. The show focused on haunted houses, visiting them and documenting the strange events people claimed happened there. Ghosts, Jinn, shadows, eerie voices. And he conducted interviews with those who had experienced supernatural or unexplained phenomena. Zach would visit these places himself and interview the witnesses. The show gained massive worldwide fame until everything ended in tragedy. This time, Zach Bagans himself became the center of the story. One day, during a scheduled episode, Zach appeared completely different from what viewers were used to. His face looked visibly pale and shaken. His body was trembling, and he spoke with a slurred, heavy tongue. He went live and began the show's introduction, saying this might be the last episode he ever does or investigates paranormal activity in. Zach, his face etched with fear, began telling what happened. He said he received a letter sent to his house in New York, a plea from someone begging him to visit their home, claiming terrifying things were happening there. Strange shadows, objects moving, inhuman voices. And he had to come tonight to witness it for himself. Now Zach had an unusual passion for these kinds of things. He never missed a chance to visit a haunted location, record footage, and do interviews. So, of course, he accepted the invitation and headed out at 10 p.m. The time stated in the letter. The address wasn't far, just a few kilometers from his place. When he arrived, Zach said the house looked completely normal from the outside. But as he approached the front door, it opened by itself. The first clue that something wasn't right. But what he saw next left him speechless. Inside the house were people, standing shoulder to shoulder, in perfectly aligned rows, with their backs turned to him. Standing in front of them was a figure moving his hands like a conductor at an orchestra. Yet he stared at the ground, his face completely obscured. And in the background, a strange, eerie music played. Zach described it as a sound his ears had never heard before. He first assumed he had walked into some kind of party, but something felt off. Why were these people standing so still? Like statues? Why wasn't anyone moving? Why did that music feel wrong? He waited, hoping the music would stop. Maybe someone would talk to him, explain what was going on, tell him who the owner of the house was and why he'd been summoned. But 2 whole hours passed. The music didn't stop. No one moved. That's when Zach's unease turned to fear. He started calling out, raising his voice, trying to get someone's attention, and then something terrifying happened. All of them, at once, turned their heads 360 degrees to face him. Their bodies remained completely still, as if someone pressed a button and synchronized them like robots. But that wasn't the worst part. Zach said these weren't people. They were creatures with dark skin, vaguely human facial features, but clearly not human. Their eyes were glowing white, emitting an unnatural light, and every single one of them stared straight at him, all at once. Zach said after that, he blacked out. He collapsed on the floor. What happened next was even more horrifying. He described what he thought was a dream. He saw himself chained up in a desert-like place, standing before a creature that resembled those he saw in the house. But this one was 3 times larger. That being threatened him. Told him that if he didn't stop what he was doing, if he kept digging into their world, exposing their secrets, invading their realm, they would never let him live in peace. Zach said that creature began violently attacking him, striking him over and over, The pain he felt was beyond anything he could imagine. Until suddenly, he awoke. He was back inside the house, but the house wasn't the same. It was completely trashed, covered in dust, broken furniture, like an abandoned building. And the most terrifying part? His body was in pain, covered in bruises and marks, as if everything he felt in the dream was real. During the broadcast, Zach even revealed parts of his body to show the bruises. They were truly disturbing. And then, he ended the show. He said that after what happened, he wasn't willing to risk his life anymore. This would be the last episode he ever made. He would no longer investigate the paranormal. At first, people thought it was all just a marketing stunt, a publicity trick from Zach and his crew to boost views. But just a few days later, an official report was released. Zach Bagans had been admitted to a psychiatric hospital. Why? Because he started acting strangely, saying and doing bizarre things. He was seen talking to invisible people, begging them to stop appearing. Take a breath, drink something warm, but don't look behind you just yet. This is one of those stories that linger. A singing star who performed a live concert. Only she didn't know. That night's audience was made up of Jinn. This happened in Kuwait, maybe 40 years ago. The singer was named Noura al-Tagaga, a beloved dakaka, a traditional Gulf wedding singer with a group of women behind her and tambourines in hand. She was in her prime, famous across Kuwait and nearby, but one invitation changed everything. One day, a woman called. She begged Noura to perform at her daughter's wedding. At first, Noura declined. Her schedule was packed, and the wedding's day was a vacation for her band. Still, the caller persisted. A few rounds of calls later, Noura agreed. Maybe out of kindness, or maybe she just didn't want to be cruel. Midnight was set. They arrived at a spectacular mansion lit by countless lights, gold jewelry everywhere, tables weighed down with food, luxury beyond imagination. When they walked in, a woman with chalk-white skin greeted them. Not a human face, it seemed statue-like. And her entourage looked off too. Eyes never blinked. Their skin was grainy. One of Noura's group whispered, "I feel like they're not human." She said she did too, but she told everyone to keep singing. So they did. The music started. At first, it felt festive, but soon the guests danced with terrifying intensity, almost robotic. At one point, a girl raised her dress mid-dance, showing legs that looked nothing like human limbs, more goat than human. Someone fainted. Music played on. Noura forced herself to keep going. As dawn neared, the lights flickered. Then, everything stopped. Silence crashed in like a wall. They ran. Girls screaming, hearts pounding. They fled faster than they ever had. Until they reached the street, gasping, panicked. A man found them there, mid-run. When he asked what shocked them out of the house, Noura explained it was a wedding. He looked shocked. This house has been abandoned for years. No one lives here. Armed with that truth, they realized the lights, the guests, even the mother of the bride, had to be illusions, or worse. Afterward, they called a spiritual healer, one who knew about the kings of the Karina, Jinn, that attached to a person's soul. He told them, "They summoned you into a wedding for the Jinn. They loved your voice, enough to lure your band to dance with them, and that was it." Noura and her ensemble retired that night, never performed again. They say the Jinn are drawn to music, drums, laughter. That night, they got more than they asked for. So next time you're asked to perform at a mysterious gathering, maybe check who's listening, because some audiences aren't human. You ever hear a story that just sticks in your brain? Like something about it feels off. Too detailed to be fake, but too terrifying to be true? This one's from China, and I swear, every time I remember it, I get chills. So, let me take you back. There's this apartment complex in the city of Wuhan. Pretty normal looking from the outside. Think, long fluorescent halls, dim lights that flicker every now and then, and neighbors that mostly keep to themselves. And then there's Sister Hong. That's not her real name, just what everyone in the building called her. She lived alone on the 7th floor, apartment 706. People say she was in her early 40s, wore the same red cheongsam every day, and never, ever turned her lights off. At night, if you passed by her door, you'd see the glow coming from underneath. She didn't talk much, but here's the weird part. People could hear her, talking, every single night. Soft murmurs and like a conversation. But no one else was ever seen going in, or coming out. Now, one night, something happened. A tenant on the 6th floor, Chen Lei, was coming home late. Like, really late. He was drunk, dragging his feet up the stairwell, because the elevator was busted, and when he passed Sister Hong's door, it was open, just a crack. And inside, no light. For the first time ever, darkness. He swore he heard someone whisper his name. Just once. Chen. He freaked out, stumbled backward, and bolted down the stairs like hell was on his heels. And the next morning, door shut, light back on, like nothing ever happened. People in the building started whispering, rumors, that she wasn't living alone, that she was performing rituals, that she used to be a medium, helping people speak to the dead, until something latched onto her and never let go. And then it got worse. 3 people in the building died within 1 month. Different causes. One fell down the stairs, another collapsed in the shower, and a third, well, they said he jumped from the 7th floor. And guess which apartment they all lived below? 706. At that point, the landlord finally stepped in. He brought maintenance to open the door, check on Sister Hong, maybe evict her if she was behind on rent. But when they opened the door, the apartment was empty. Like, completely empty. No furniture, no lights, no signs of life. Only thing inside, a red dress, hanging alone on the back of the door. And the walls, covered in writing. Dozens and dozens of names, scrawled in what looked like ink, or maybe something darker. The last name written was Chen Lei. I know. It sounds made up, right? Except Chen moved out the next day, never came back. He told the security guard, I was next. And Sister Hong, she was never found. No rental record, no ID, nothing. The landlord even swore he never had a tenant named Sister Hong in Unit 706. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. Months later, after the rumors had already turned into ghost stories, police actually tracked down the truth. See, someone reported strange activity in a nearby district. A man wandering at night, dressed in women's clothes, mumbling to himself about names that still needed to be written. When they stopped him, they realized something terrifying. This wasn't Sister Hong at all. It was a man. His name was Jiao. He had been renting apartments under false identities, dressing as a woman, and performing what looked like strange rituals. When investigators raided a small unit he'd been staying in, they found the same scrawled names on the walls, and the same red dress, folded neatly in the corner. Neighbors who had seen Sister Hong in the hallway swore up and down it was the same person. The soft voice, the red dress, the quiet presence. But up close, there was no mistaking it. Sister Hong had never existed. Jiao was arrested, and while the police tried to call it a case of mental illness and obsession, people in the neighborhood still whisper that something darker was at play. Because when he was questioned, Jiao only said one thing over and over. She told me to keep writing their names. She told me she wasn't finished yet. And just like that, the case ended. No ghost, no real Sister Hong. Just a man named Jiao. But ask anyone who lived in that building, and they'll tell you the lights in 706 still flicker at night. I'm curious. Are you hearing these stories alone, or is someone beside you? Share in the comments. I read them all. What would you do if you saw a man in a bunny suit, standing motionless in the middle of the road, at night? Now imagine this. He's holding an axe, or worse. He's inviting your child to follow him into the woods. This isn't fiction. These are two real legends, two countries apart, but somehow terrifyingly alike. Welcome to the story of the Bunnyman and Brazil's Bad Bunny. And trust me, you'll never look at rabbits the same way again. Hey, if you're like me, you probably think of bunnies as cute, harmless little creatures. Floppy ears, Easter eggs, childhood stuff, right? But tonight, we're going down a different rabbit hole. There are two men, two legends, that have haunted their countries for decades. Both wore bunny suits. Both were linked to crimes, and neither has been truly explained to this day. Some say they were madmen. Others say it's all urban legend. But what makes these stories dangerous is how close they feel to something real. Let's start in Virginia. October 1970. A young couple is driving through Fairfax County at night, heading toward a place called Colchester Overpass. It's quiet. Too quiet. And then, a man leaps out of the shadows, dressed in a full white bunny costume. He's screaming about trespassers, and before they can even react, he hurls an axe through the car window. They survive, just barely, and they report it to the police. Days later, another couple sees the same man under the bridge, the Bunnyman, swinging a hatchet. Local media picks it up. Soon, the legend spreads. Was it a prankster? An escaped mental patient? Some even claim he lived in the woods, surviving on rage and rabbit meat. Police investigated. No suspect was caught. The axe? Real. The fear? Absolutely real. To this day, Bunnyman Bridge is a hotspot for thrill seekers, but many claim they hear scratching noises, see a white shape vanish into the woods, or worse. Hear a deep voice whispering from the tunnel, "Get off my land." Whether he was real or not, something about that story sticks with people. Because it's not just about a man in a costume, it's about how quickly innocence turns terrifying. Now, let's leave the forests of Virginia and travel far south into the deep jungles of Brazil. Because over there, there's a darker tale. One that didn't end with an axe thrown, but with children missing and a shack in the woods. In the early 2010s, strange rumors started spreading online. Videos, posts, blurry images. They spoke of a man in a tattered rabbit suit luring kids near small towns in Brazil. They called him the Bad Bunny. Some said he offered candy. Others said he promised magic tricks, but the children who followed him didn't always return. The legend goes that police, following a tip, discovered a shack deep in the forest. Inside were broken toys, costumes, child-sized shoes, disturbing drawings, even blood. Photos began to circulate. Some claimed it was real. Others said it was a viral hoax. But the fear it sparked, especially among parents, was undeniable. Some versions even say the Bad Bunny was linked to dark web streams, offering access to disturbing footage in exchange for Bitcoin. But again, no confirmed arrest, no name, just a grainy mugshot passed around as proof. That's the problem with stories like this. There's just enough detail to feel real, but not quite enough to verify, which makes it worse. What if it's real and covered up? Or what if the story keeps spreading? Because the monster is still out there. You probably shouldn't listen to this after midnight. You'll understand why. Back in the 1990s, in the state of New Jersey, there was a psychiatric hospital. But this wasn't your typical hospital. The stories that came out of it made it sound more like a horror film than a medical facility. In fact, later, locals gave it a nickname, the Devil's House. The hospital housed more than 150 teenage girls, all between the ages of 12 and 18. Here's the strange part. The owners had a strict rule. No one over 18 was allowed in, and they only accepted girls, no boys, no exceptions. Weird, right? One of the former patients said that her floor had 2 rows of rooms facing each other, separated by a long corridor. Every night, as soon as the clock passed midnight, they'd hear it. The sound of someone sprinting through the hallway at full speed. Then, the window at the end of the corridor would slam open, and a loud, sickening thud would echo from outside, followed by a blood-curdling scream. Naturally, they thought, someone had jumped. But when they came out to look, they saw something far stranger. A group of girls their own age, ones they'd never seen before, standing along the corridor with their faces toward the wall, crying, shaking, like they were terrified of something. Later, whispers started to spread. These were the spirits of girls who had either committed suicide or, and this is the part no one wanted to believe, had been killed as part of a ritual offering to the devil. The scene always caused panic. To keep control, the staff would beat the girls and force them back into their rooms. And the more this happened, the worse the girls' mental health got. They'd come here to get treatment, but found themselves trapped in something much darker. Over time, the girls got used to it. Every night, same thing. Footsteps racing down the hallway, window bursting open, thud, scream. One girl told a different story, about a nurse who came to her at the exact same time every night with an injection. The shot would knock her out instantly. When she woke up, she'd find tiny red dots on her stomach, dots that formed the outline of some terrifying creature. When she saw it, she'd spiral into a hysterical breakdown, screaming until she passed out. Eventually, suicides began among the actual patients. The pressure, the terror, it broke them. 3 confirmed cases, each in a different way. But here's the weirdest part. To this day, not a single one of their bodies was ever found. And of course, rumors said they too had been sacrificed. The hospital's owners always had an easy excuse. They were mentally unstable. Suicides happen. And just like that, no blame on them. Until one night, a girl escaped. She told the police everything. Oh, and one more thing. When you entered this hospital, visits from family or friends were completely banned until you were fully recovered. That was their rule. The escaped girls said that, at a certain time every night, all the patients were gathered into a circle. In the middle of that circle, a man would appear. A man, but not entirely human. She described his face as having strange folds of skin growing from his head, almost like horns, and eyes so wide and sharp they looked like a tiger's. He would stand in the center, close his eyes, and chant something no one understood. Then, the girls would feel the circle start to spin like a carousel, faster and faster, until they all collapsed to the floor, one after another. When they woke up, they were back in their beds, with no memory of how. And this happened every single night. The police acted fast. They went straight to the hospital. And that's when the real shock came. Inside, the place looked abandoned. Not for weeks, not for months, for years. Beds broken, walls covered in dust and cobwebs. No one there, not a soul. And yet, the stench of blood was so strong, some officers couldn't stay inside. The investigation? Silenced. Completely. People said the case involved something far bigger than just a few corrupt humans. The girls? Gone. No one knows where. The hospital? Still standing. Still untouched. And no one dares to go near it. This story is about Ahmed Mahrous. On paper, he was a schoolteacher, but in reality, he was one of the most dangerous sorcerers and magicians in Upper Egypt. Every type of magic you've heard of, or never even imagined, Ahmed had practiced it. And the crime he committed was something only a sorcerer like him could have pulled off. The year was 2001. Ahmed graduated from the Faculty of Education, got a job as a teacher, and settled in a small village in Sohag Governorate. He came from a modest family, with finances below average, but they were well-respected people who sacrificed to get him through school. None of that mattered much to Ahmed. What he cared about were the people in his village who were doing far better financially. Since only a few people in the village had completed their education, and Ahmed was one of them, he always felt he deserved a much better life. In Upper Egypt, most people know that sorcerers and fortune-tellers are basically con artists. But there's always a small number who truly believe magic can solve anything. Ahmed's village, unfortunately, was infamous for its fascination with magic and sorcery, especially black magic. Despite being educated, Ahmed was fascinated by magic from his university days. He started small, reading coffee cups, palm reading, telling classmates and villagers things that sometimes came true and sometimes didn't. But people began to believe he had supernatural knowledge. A year after graduation, Ahmed got married and moved into a modest apartment in the same village. He taught school for 3 years, but on the side, he read palms and coffee cups for people. By 2006, his name had spread. People came from far away just to have him read for them. He soon realized something important. People were willing to pay any amount for a spell or amulet to get what they wanted. Magic in the village ranged from simple, spells for marriage, jobs, or blocking someone's luck, to dangerous, causing illness, physical harm, or using magic to locate buried antiquities. Ahmed learned it all. From the basic charms to the darkest black magic, relying on numerology, famous occult books like Shams al-Ma'arif and Al-Azif, and even secret grimoires known only to the most extreme sorcerers. Within a year, Ahmed transformed, from a regular man into a frightening figure whose very gaze made people uneasy. He upgraded his life, from a cramped apartment to a 3-story house with land. The first and second floors became his business space for receiving clients. those seeking spells or breaking curses. The third floor was for him and his family, who at first disapproved, but soon accepted when the money started flowing. People feared him. It was known. If you crossed Ahmed, he could harm you. His rituals were elaborate. Amulets, water blessed with incantations, strange requests for personal items like clothing or hair. And for the most powerful magic, he demanded gold, claiming that the Jinn loved it and would fulfill any wish if enough gold was present during the ritual. By 2010, Ahmed specialized in a new kind of magic. You could come to him if something was stolen, and he'd tell you exactly who took it and where it was hidden. Strangely, he was always right. His reputation grew. He became a millionaire, employing many people and gaining a clientele from all walks of life. Of course, teaching was now just a facade. Magic was his true profession. But in 2013, trouble began. Some villagers whispered that Ahmed's magic had weakened, and new sorcerers in the area were more powerful. To protect his image, Ahmed took extreme measures, even harming those who merely thought about questioning him. Then came Amal Ahmed Ali, a wealthy 40-year-old woman from a prominent livestock trading family. Amal had been a client of Ahmed's for years. That year, 2 of her water buffalo went missing. She searched everywhere with no luck, so she went to Ahmed to find the thief. Ahmed held a session but claimed he needed certain supplies to finish the work. The very next day, another buffalo was stolen. Panicked, Amal called Ahmed. He demanded a large amount of gold for a powerful ritual, plus a hefty cash payment. She agreed, gathering all her gold and her family's gold, and went to Ahmed's house around 6 p.m. She never returned. By 10 p.m., her family was worried. She had taken all the gold, but wasn't the type to run away. Her father-in-law, the well-respected Muhammad Abu El-Ez, searched the village but found nothing. Eventually, someone mentioned seeing her heading to Ahmed's house. When Muhammad asked Ahmed, he said she had visited but left around 8 p.m. The family contacted the police. Investigators quickly determined Amal had no reason to flee, and the last confirmed place she'd been was Ahmed's home. The next day, police went to search his house. Ahmed wasn't there, but his wife was. With a warrant, they searched and found numerous charms, spells, and occult items scattered everywhere. One locked room caught their attention. Inside, it was set up for client sessions, but in the corner was a large metal barrel filled with fresh cement. When they tapped on it, the sound was muffled at the top, but hollow at the bottom. They broke it open, and blood seeped out. Inside, under the cement, was Amal's body. She had been struck in the head with an axe. Ahmed was arrested. At first, he denied everything, claiming anyone could have entered the open lower floors of his home. But police soon found all of Amal's gold in the same room. One of Ahmed's workers revealed that Ahmed had asked him to pour cement for a wall the day before, then sent him away to finish it himself. Finally, Ahmed confessed. His plan had been to bury the barrel on his land after 3 days. The truth came out. Ahmed employed thieves and informants from the village who fed him secrets about families. Sometimes the thieves themselves would steal items, hide them, and Ahmed would magically reveal their location to clients. He had targeted Amal for months. She was wealthy, believed in his magic, and had recently hinted that his spells were losing their power. Fearing she'd take her business elsewhere, he decided to kill her and take her gold. That night, after confirming she had brought the gold, he struck her with an axe, placed her in the barrel, poured cement over her, and calmly went upstairs to his family. The next day, he went about his business as if nothing had happened. Ahmed Marous was sentenced to death, a respectable teacher on the surface, but one who chose the path of ignorance, greed, and evil. And as they say, if magic were truly real, it would have saved him from the gallows. One final descent, deeper than before. If you're ready, let's begin. Imagine a life so ordinary, so grounded, that tragedy turns it upside down in a single, devastating moment. That story will make you question justice, revenge, and who the real villains are. But before we dive in, dim the lights, put on your headphones, and let's begin. Vitaly Kaloyev was born in 1967 in North Ossetia, Russia. From a young age, he was known for his sharp mind and strong work ethic. As an engineer, he was meticulous, ambitious, and deeply respected in his community. By the time he married Svetlana, he had built himself a life that many would envy. A beautiful home, a thriving career, and a family he cherished. Their first child, Konstantin, inherited his father's intelligence. He excelled in school and shared a deep passion for chess, spending hours strategizing with his father. 6 years later, they welcomed Diana, a lively little girl who idolized her father. She knew his phone number by heart and would call him whenever he traveled, longing to share her small adventures with him. To Vitaly, life was simple, beautiful, and complete. But life has a cruel way of testing happiness. In 2000, Vitaly's company faced financial troubles. He was forced to accept a 2-year engineering project in Spain, far from his family. He promised himself that despite the distance, he would remain a part of every milestone in his children's lives. Finally, after 2 long years, it was July 1st, 2002. Vitaly's family was traveling to Spain for a vacation, a long-awaited reunion that was meant to heal the distance and celebrate life together. Vitaly waited at the airport, heart full of anticipation, imagining the laughter of his children, the embrace of his wife, and the smell of home that would finally be complete again. Hours passed. Flights came and went. Anxiety crept in, but airport staff assured him that the plane would arrive shortly. And then, the world changed. A collision occurred high above southern Germany, near the Swiss border. 2 aircraft, Swissair Flight 111 and a Russian passenger flight carrying Vitaly's family, collided mid-air in a devastating split-second catastrophe. The explosion was massive. The Russian plane disintegrated before it even hit the ground. Vitaly had no idea. He called, waited, and asked desperately for updates. The answer came like a knife to the heart. Everyone on board had perished. In the days that followed, pieces of his children and his wife were recovered. Diana, his little girl with the bright eyes and endless curiosity, was found first. Beside her, a small necklace he had given her, a tiny token of love, was all that remained. Soon after, Konstantin and Svetlana were identified. Vitaly's life, once full of color, had turned into an endless gray nightmare. Vitaly was known as a quiet, measured man. He rarely showed strong emotion publicly, but the sight of his family's remains, the incomprehensible nature of the accident, broke him in ways words cannot describe. He built shrines for them in his home, small beds for each child, their favorite toys, photographs, even chessboards for Konstantin. His grief was private, but it was also growing into something darker. A burning need for accountability. The investigations revealed what Vitaly could barely accept. The crash was preventable. Miscommunication and negligence in air traffic control were to blame. Vitaly learned that the Swissair control system, SkyGuide, was understaffed during the fatal night. The officer responsible for monitoring the airspace, Peter Nielsen, was left alone while his colleague was on break. Vitaly's family could have been saved, had someone been watching, had the warnings been received in time. For months, Vitaly wrestled with his grief. He attended memorials, gave interviews, and traveled to Switzerland to visit the crash site. But nothing could erase the image of his children, the warmth of his wife, now lost forever. And then he made a decision. February 21st, 2004. Vitaly arrived in Switzerland. For days, he stayed in a hotel, rehearsing what he planned to do. Then, he went to Peter Nielsen's home. He rang the doorbell. Peter's wife answered first. Vitaly presented himself calmly, as if delivering a message, and asked for Peter. When Peter stepped outside, Vitaly handed him a folder, a collection of photographs of his own family after the crash, images meant to pierce him as deeply as the tragedy had pierced Vitaly. Peter reacted with disbelief, anger, and contempt. He threw the photos to the ground. In that instant, Vitaly's grief and rage merged. He pulled a knife. In a blur of motion and emotion, Peter Nielsen was stabbed. Vitaly fled immediately, returning to his hotel room. For hours, sleep eluded him, as if his entire being had been consumed by the act. Vitaly surrendered to the police shortly thereafter. During questioning, he claimed initially that he intended only to confront Nielsen, not to kill him. But once the photos were thrown down, rage had overtaken him. Psychological evaluations confirmed his extreme distress, but determined he was fit to stand trial. The case became a worldwide sensation. Public opinion split. Some saw Vitaly as a grieving father driven to vengeance. Others condemned him as a murderer. The Swiss court sentenced him to 8 years in prison. Yet the backlash against Sky Guide, who had been implicated in negligence, was fierce. The company faced multiple charges, directors were held accountable, and the Swiss government issued formal apologies to Russia. Vitaly was released in 2007. Returning to Russia, he was hailed as a hero by some for avenging his children, though others remained critical. He rebuilt his life, remarried, and became a public figure advocating for aviation safety. Yet the shadow of Flight 611 never left him. Each year, he visited the graves of his family, honoring their memory, and reflecting on the delicate line between grief, justice, and vengeance. Vitaly Kaloyev's story is one that forces us to confront uncomfortable questions. When tragedy strikes, who is truly at fault? Where does justice end and revenge begin? And in a world of preventable errors and human mistakes, how do we reconcile loss with responsibility? Some say the real villain was Sky Guide, the company that left one man to manage a complex airspace alone. Others argue that grief itself can become a dangerous force, capable of turning even the most ordinary person into something unrecognizable. As you sit in the dark tonight, listening to this story, remember, tragedy can come without warning, and the human heart can carry the weight of unimaginable loss, or the fire of vengeance. If you felt chills tonight, or questioned the limits of justice, leave your thoughts in the comments. Who do you believe was the true villain in this story? Peter Nielsen, Sky Guide, or the tragedy itself? The night may be over, but the darkness never leaves. Subscribe and step back in when the door creaks open again.